You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me.
So I'm here today with the most famous Sarah Brooks, and we met fairly recently online. You know how you tell your children that they're never supposed to make friends online and that the internet's a dangerous place? Well, I agree, but here I am, mom making friends online. And so I met Sarah in a writing group. It's called Write That Book with Trisha Goyer. And it's been kind of neat because though I don't have a book that I'm currently working on, someday I think that I'll do that. And so it's been a neat place for me to go and listen and watch and hear about everybody else's adventures because I'm learning a lot. So with the birth of a book, I'm finding out often it comes from the story that is in someone's heart and the life that they're living. So I just want you to take a minute and introduce your family, and then you could even just jump right into telling me the story of why you ended up writing a book.
For sure. Well, thanks so much, Pam, for having me. I'm excited to get to chat with you for a little bit. A little bit about my family. I'm a third generation pastor's wife, which is kind of different. My dad was a pastor and so was my grandfather, and I'm married to a pastor. And then we have 4 kids, aging. Well, my daughter's going to be 4 next week. And then we've got a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So they're still fairly young, but they're getting to the age where they can do some stuff on their own. But basically, we have been living in New Mexico for the last 10 years where my husband is a pastor. And I'm one of those people who, even from like a little bitty age, always wanted to write a book. I grew up like just devouring books at my library. I would spend my recess on the playground, like scribbling in spiral notebooks. But the funny thing is, the book that I ended up writing isn't one that was ever on my radar. I think a lot of us enter into parenthood or we enter into our adulthood with kind of these expectations for what life is going to look like. And for our family, life ended up looking a little bit differently than we originally planned. I mentioned I had 4 kids. My youngest daughter, we were super excited to finally have a girl after 3 boys because we wanted just a little bit of pink to balance out the mud and the bugs and the dirt. So we were super excited when she was born. And about 5 months into her life, we started realizing that there was something wrong. Her head started growing really fast. And at her 5-month checkup, her pediatrician said, we probably should check on this. Now, her head was kind of big when she was born, but all of my babies were kind of big-headed babies, so I wasn't too worried about it. But at that point, it really was starting to get to a place where we could tell something was off. From that, we went to a lot of testing where we later discovered she had hydrocephalus, which if you've studied Latin or any of those old kind of languages, the hydrocephalus, it's water on the brain. And so she had a backup of spinal fluid that was putting pressure on her brain tissue. And the only treatment is brain surgery. So at 5 months old, she had her very first brain surgery. And then she had a second brain surgery at 7 months old. So as a mama, you don't enter into motherhood thinking, I'm going to hand my baby off to a brain surgeon before her first birthday. But that was kind of the world we found ourselves in. It wasn't something we ever expected, but looking back, we can kind of see how God has had his hand on our story the whole way through, and how those difficult times where you're just kind of sitting there going, what do I do with this? How do I get through this? This doesn't seem fair, or why is this happening to us? Now, 4 years later, I'm able to look back and see how God has taken those threads of having a child who has medical issues and medical challenges and has given me the opportunity to just kind of speak hope in life into other parents who are facing that, because it's hard and it's a loss. It kind of feels like you're grieving what you thought life would be like with your child. And that's not to say that it's all terrible. My daughter is a hoot. She is funny, she is sassy, but she has challenges. Like, we've been in therapy since she was 5 months old, and she goes to the doctor a whole lot more than your typical child does. But I wouldn't trade my experience with her for the world. So, long way of getting around to what the book is about. The book is for special needs kids. So when I said it, I wanted to write a book when I was a little girl, I never envisioned that the book I would write would be about special needs parenting. But it's neat to see how God has brought that story full circle and is now using what was a difficult, hard thing to hopefully bring hope and encouragement to others who are on that same path.
Yeah, that would not have been on your radar as a
No.
young woman. It's something that the Lord puts it in front of you, and you have a decision to make, like, where am I going to go with this, and how do I process it?
Right. And see, and all through the pregnancy, everything was normal. Through the birth, everything was normal. So we really didn't have a clue what was coming. And I think in some ways that's a little bit of a mercy, because I think if I would have known when I was pregnant about all of the issues that were coming later, it would have been more stressful. So in some ways, that's a little bit of God's grace, giving us the information when we needed it, but not a moment earlier for that.
I think so, because I think if we were to see our whole lives planned out ahead of time and know we were going to walk that path, we would have a lot of digging our heels in.
Yes.
But when we just keep walking, just doing the next thing. Was it Elizabeth Elliot that says, like, when she was dealing with the processing of the loss of her husband, she's like, I get up and I do the next thing. I just need to do the next thing.
Yeah. And I think that's all we can do as moms, because we don't know. You could have a perfectly healthy child and have a tragic accident and you'd be facing difficulty. But I mean, all you can do as a mom is trust God with each next moment and do the next right thing. Do the thing that you can do, the thing that you're called to do, and just trust Him in that process.
So where did you find support in that? Did people just like jump out to you, or are there Facebook support groups, or did the hospital maybe connect you?
Well, interestingly enough, you talked about at the beginning, making friends online on Facebook with complete strangers. That's what it was for me. Like, my daughter ended up having a diagnosis of Gorlin syndrome, which was a genetic defect. One of her genes just randomly mutated, and the result was a condition called Gorlin syndrome. And she's also missing a portion of her brain that connects the left and right hemisphere. So, as most modern people do, when I had a question, I asked Dr. Google. So I'm typing in all of her diagnoses, trying to figure out what does this mean for my child, and discovered there were Facebook groups for these different conditions. So I was able to get plugged in and connected with these other moms who could really sympathize and understand in a way that your average mom around the corner might not know, because they don't have a child who faces these same challenges. So that was a huge blessing for me to be able to like pop up on Facebook and say, hey, I'm really kind of scared about this MRI tomorrow. Has anybody's child gone through this? How did they do? Do you have any tips? And to have them say, oh yeah, mine did that last month. It was fine. You might try this, da, 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 da. So that has been super, super helpful. And it makes me really thankful that I live in a time when we have access to technology like that, because my daughter's condition, I think, is 1 in 35,000 or so.
Wow.
So that's not something you're going to run into every day, just in your daily course of life. But yeah, online has been a huge resource for me. And so I definitely recommend, if you have a child with medical issues, as weird as it sounds, look on Facebook. Like, you can probably find a great community of parents who are facing those similar challenges.
Yeah. So how does it impact your family as a whole? I mean, the big brothers, they also had this impact into their life.
Right. They did. And she had at-home therapy for the first 3 years of our life through early intervention with our state. And so we had therapists in and out of our house pretty much every day of the week. So they grew up kind of used to that. And it was funny. My youngest son, he didn't understand that not every baby walked at age 2. Like my daughter didn't take her first steps till she was 26 months old. So he saw like an 11-month-old walking. He's like, whoa, why is that baby walking so soon? Look at that little tiny baby walking. And I had to be like, no, that's what's typical. You know, babies typically walk around 1 year of age. It took your sister a little bit longer to learn, but I think it's been good for them in some ways because it teaches them a little bit of empathy. It takes her a little bit longer to learn how to do something. She's super smart, but because of the way her brain is designed, it takes her a little bit longer to learn how to do something initially. So I mentioned earlier, she's missing that part that combines the two halves of the brain. It's called the corpus callosum. And so since hers isn't there, that band of nerve fibers that connects the hemispheres is missing. And so her brain basically has to completely rewire itself to make those connections that would just come naturally to your typical person. So it took her a little longer to learn how to walk. It generally takes these kids a little longer to learn how to do something like tie their shoes or ride a bike. Just anything that requires coordination of the left and right side of the body takes a little bit longer. So my kids have learned, just patience, and they're super awesome encouragers for her. Like they'll be her. I have to remind them they don't have to do everything she tells them to do because they're that kind of way with her. They take good care of her. I'm like, you can tell your sister no. You don't have to do exactly what she says all the time. But no, they've been amazing with her. And I think it's given them kind of a glimpse into maybe what some of their classmates might face. If their classmates have physical challenges or neurological challenges, it gives them kind of a inside glance into that world that they might not have otherwise had.
Yeah, she sounds like my youngest because he's totally neurotypical, but he's the youngest out of 9 kids. And so he's just like, would you go get me a glass of milk, please? Would you go do this? Could you do this for me? And we kind of hit this like, it's time for you to start doing some of these things for yourself now. Right. And it's time, you're going to learn to read this year. And he's, why would I do that? I have everybody at my calling, Right. So it is kind of a funny thing to balance,
Yes. The babies of the family, for sure.
And one thing I noticed just in talking to you is how your vocabulary is different, and you are now very learned. Like you said, Dr. Google has probably, it's become, you probably never envisioned yourself to have such a medical education as well.
Right. I've learned words like ventriculomegaly and endoscopic third ventriculostomies. And so it's funny, you know how sometimes Facebook will target you with ads based on what you've put in your Facebook post. It started giving me like, your patients might need this information. I'm like, I'm not a doctor, but I am a mom. So we kind of, any mom who has a child with medical issues, you do kind of learn words that you never expected to know. And it's kind of a survival mechanism. I say I'm not an MD, but I'm a mom doctor. So it kind of gives me just enough information to be able to ask the questions that need to be asked, but not enough to actually do anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I have a few other friends that have children with special needs. And it is something I didn't realize until I started talking to them regularly. Like I had never heard of neurotypical children or a typical child. And I've even heard that in some of your talk today. Yes. Whereas I used to say, oh, are they a normal child? Or are they not a normal child? Right. And I'm learning that even though it's not my situation, I'm learning that I need to learn the vocabulary because for all sorts of reasons, sensitivity and such, but learning something about your world really helps me. And so I'm wondering too, that's part of why you wrote the book too, was to this raise awareness and write a book. It's a children's book, and I've seen the drawings and they're beautiful. Your illustrator has done a fabulous job.
She is so talented. She has done an excellent job.
Yes. And I think that, so tell me more about your illustrations and some of the language in your book.
Right. So the book is called The Wonderful Way You Are. And for me, it started when my daughter was getting ready to enter into preschool. We have a preschool for developmental disabilities. So it would be where she could get some therapies and do some social interaction that would be really good for her. But I started to get nervous because I didn't know how other kids would treat her. She has a little bit of a larger head than normal due to the hydrocephalus, but then her Gorlin syndrome also requires us to be really, really careful with sun exposure. So when she goes outside, she has to wear a giant hat, she has to wear sunscreen, she has to have like the sun protective clothing. And so I started getting nervous. What if somebody says something to her outside on the playground about being dressed up like a grandma, because she's got all the gear and it's kind of hard to hide a giant sun hat. And so I wanted to write a story for her to let her know that I thought she was wonderful just the way that she was, and to acknowledge that, yeah, she is different, but that's okay. Like everybody's different. Everybody has different struggles. And so I was really intentional in the book about highlighting some of the different challenges that kids might face. So I have kids in wheelchairs, kids who have like a feeding tube, kids who have maybe a prosthetic. And so when I was talking to my illustrator, I said, I want a kid who feels different to be able to look in this book and find someone who looks like them. And to be able to say, hey, I'm not the only one with this issue. And I'm not the only one who maybe feels left out because I'm not like the other boys and girls. But the whole heart of the book is for children to know that they are wonderful and that they are completely and totally loved just the way that they are. Because we feel a lot of pressure, even as, typical adults in society to, fit in. And when you might have some obvious physical or neurological difference, that pressure doesn't necessarily disappear, but it becomes much harder to accomplish. Like you are going to stand out because you are different. But what I think our kids need to know is that that's not a bad thing. Being different is not bad. Like difference does not equal bad. Difference just means different. And that there are some things that can come from being different that are very good things. And so the book was called The Wonderful Way You Are. And I struggled with that a little bit because the fact that my daughter has a condition that's going to cause her pain and discomfort and cancer, and, that's not wonderful. The condition is not wonderful, but she is. And so I want her to know that she's not just defined by her challenges, but like intrinsically who she is wonderful, and that I wouldn't change a thing about her. So that's kind of the long way around what the book was. But it was really just my heart for kids and parents to be able to sit down together and say, hey, I see that this might be hard, but you're going to be okay. And I'm going to be here with you. And I think you're amazing. And I think you're wonderful. So that's kind of the heart of the book.
And you're a first-time author, right? This is the first time you've ever done anything like this.
And that's so funny. Like I said at the beginning, I always wanted to be a writer, but this was never on my radar of things to write. Like I love children's books. I have bookshelves upon bookshelves, but I was honestly just laying in bed one night getting ready to go to bed, and like the phrases just started coming in my mind. And so I just pulled out my phone and typed them into my notes app on my phone, and within 24 hours, I basically had the entire text of the book. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can't draw. Like I can draw, but I can't draw. So I was on Facebook, and one of my friends from childhood, who was kind of a mentor to our family, posted a family calendar that her granddaughter had drawn, that her granddaughter had taken all of their family members and turned them into cartoon characters. And each month had a different page. And I said, that is amazing. Like she did such a good job. So I texted Peggy, I'm like, do you think your granddaughter might want to illustrate my children's book? And she had never done anything like that before. She's, was getting her master's in fine arts, but she had never done children's book illustration. So it was a little bit of a learning process for both of us, but it was one of those things that God just brought the pieces together at the right time. And it's been neat to see it all come together.
Yeah, so she sounds young, your illustrator.
She is.
It's her first big project.
It's her first big project too, but I think she's got a bright future. She's very, very talented.
So you're doing it through Kickstarter. You're
I
not
am
going a traditional publishing route.
Right. And part of that is because the special needs book market is what's considered a niche group. So that just means it's a small part of a big population. And it's really hard to get a book deal, even if you're trying to publish a book that'll reach everybody. But if you say, hey, this is only going to apply to maybe 10% of the population, it's really hard to get a traditional deal for a book. And plus, it takes a long time. It takes about 2 years from start to finish to get a children's book published going the traditional route. And for me, my daughter was going to be in kindergarten by that point, and I wanted something for her too. I didn't want to necessarily wait till she was in 4th grade before I could put this children's book out. So I did it on Kickstarter, which has been amazing. And it got fully funded in the first 24 hours, which was just totally blowing my mind and has been very, very encouraging for me. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from other parents saying, yes, like we need stuff like this for our kids. Because like I said, the traditional publishers aren't as able to invest in some of these books that go to smaller markets, not because they're bad people, not because they don't like special needs, not at all. They're businesses, and it costs a lot to make a book. And so they have to be really careful with which books they choose, because it costs them a lot more money to produce a book than it does for me to produce a book, because I don't have to pay for an office or pay for health insurance for other people and
Right.
all that goes along with regular publishing.
So when it comes out, which I don't know exactly the timing of when we'll air this podcast, but so when it comes out, what is going to be the best way for people to find it?
It should be available on Amazon and pretty much all your
good.
major online retailers. It will be there, but you can go to thewonderfulwayyouare.com, and I'll have links to all the stores there as well, because I also have it on my website. So that's the plan.
Oh, that's great. So I wonder, do you have a second book planned?
I do, actually. I really
you do?
I do. I would love to do a book for special needs siblings.
Oh,
Just because I think that's an important conversation too. Because like I said, with my youngest son, he had a hard time understanding why his sister needed help with some things, or why she couldn't do what other kids could do. And so I think that's what I would really love to do. Once I can get this one done, it'd be to do another book for the siblings of special needs kids.
That's really exciting. I think when the Lord puts something on your heart, he makes it so clear sometimes, like waking up in the middle of the night, writing down those things. And so when did that happen? Like, how far are you out from that wake up in the middle of the night?
It has been about a year since that point. Yeah. So it has been a little bit of a journey, but we have made it one step at a time, just doing the next thing that we're able to do. So it's been almost a year to the date since I first got the book idea.
And this has been a big year for that, because so when you were doing that, your 3 older ones were in school, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so you were working on this, managing that, knowing that those ones were in school and you had some time to work on it. While Elizabeth is home with you.
Right.
And then kaboom, Corona hits, and now you've got everybody at home.
Yes.
And so that's been a bit of a challenge.
It has been an adjustment. Like, it's been good in some ways. Like, we've loved being able to stay in our pajamas more. And I'm such a homebody anyway, so not having to go out and do all this stuff has been nice. But in terms of like getting work done, it has been harder. I've just kind of shifted my work time from like 10 to midnight instead of during the daytime hours. So I stay up a little bit later than I did previously, but we're making it work. But our school is supposed to start back next week, allegedly, online. We won't go in person for quite a while. So that'll be kind of a new adventure to see how I'll juggle 4 kids, distance learning at my kitchen table. So
yeah, that'll be a new phase in life for sure. In that, one of the things you talk about at different conferences is finding hope in hard things.
Right.
So this is kind of your own area that you're working through.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I think it's good for people. I mean, not just special needs parents, but parents in general, to know that, hard things will happen. And I think we kind of get this false image that if you love Jesus and if you follow God, that nothing bad will ever happen in your life. And that's just not biblical. It's just not. And that whole phrase, God won't give you more than you can handle, that is like the farthest thing from the truth. Like, God tends to give you more than you can handle, but he never gives you more than he can handle. So that's just kind of been the encouragement for me, because I look at some of the stuff that we face and like, it is hard. It is hard. But the thing that has given me hope is the knowledge that God doesn't allow us pain unless there is a purpose. So it's not like he just delights in seeing us have a hard time. That's not the case. And so for me and for my daughter, knowing, yeah, she does have these challenges. Yeah, our family does face these difficulties, but God is going to bring something good out of that. And I believe like this book is part of that, just being able to have a conversation with another mom and say, hey, I can understand to an extent what you're facing with this child, because I have walked through that. And that's something I never could have said had I not walked down this path with my own daughter, because you just don't know. I had no idea. Like you were saying, I had no idea about neurotypical and, atypical and, neurodiversity. Like those were not words that were in my vocabulary. But because God has allowed us to walk down this path, he has given us a way to bring hope to others who are not hopeless. Because there is like a feeling of grief or a feeling of loss when you have a child with a diagnosis. And there is that temptation to go, why, God? Why is that happening to her? Why is that happening to us? And I think it's okay for us to ask those questions. Like I look at the Psalms, and David over and over again says like, why, oh Lord? Like it seems like all this bad stuff is happening. Why is this happening? But the good thing that we can observe from David's life is he doesn't stay stuck there. Like he asks why, but he always comes back around to God's character and acknowledging that God is good and that God has good plans and that God has good purposes. So I think that's something that we can be reminded that it's okay. God can handle our why questions, but we don't need to stay in that why. We don't need that to let that why turn into bitterness and anger, because it doesn't really help us. Like I could be bitter, I could be angry. How does that help me? It doesn't change my situation one bit. Like I'm still in the same exact spot, except I'm just really angry about it. But if you can change kind of your perspective, because you can't change your circumstances. Like you just can't, and sometimes, but you can have control over your attitude and your perspective as you face those things, and just kind of ask God, to go from that why me to that what now. Okay, this is in our lives. What do you want us to do with this? How can we use this pain and give it a purpose? Like, what can you do with this? And I fully, wholeheartedly believe that God can bring good things out of bad things. It doesn't make the bad things good. They're still bad. But what God can do is take those bad things that were meant to destroy us, and we're meant to put a wedge between our relationship with God and a wedge between our relationship with others, and allow him to use that to open doors to reach others and to share his love and his hope with them, even in the midst of hard things, because the hard things are part of life. Like it's just part of life, and your hard thing might look different from my hard thing. It's not a competition of hard things. It's the knowledge that what God has allowed in your life has been allowed for a purpose, and your job is to trust and to see and to do what God has laid out for you to do, and to trust that he can redeem even those hard things to bring hope and healing to others.
That's fantastic. So I want you to lead me in this. So what can I do as someone who doesn't walk down this road? I don't have these challenges in my life, and I'll part it out into two different things, because often when we think, what can we do? The first response is take a casserole, kind
right.
of thing.
Casseroles are good.
Yeah. I think we have now, though. It's interesting. We bring up online stuff so much. We actually have people physically, my neighbor next door and down the road, who I can jump in and encourage her. And that's one way. And you could mention, like, is there something when somebody lives in close proximity, what ways are there to connect and help and support them? But secondary to that, what about online? Like, does that, when they put that little care emoji at the,
Oh, yeah.
like, is that appropriate? Is there a better way we could love on people, even online, to support them when they're going through these challenges?
Right. I think a lot of times it's not so much what you can do as much as what you probably shouldn't do.
Ah,
I think a lot of times people tend to want to give you like cliches, and cliches are seldom helpful. So like I'll have a lot of times people say, God only gives special needs kids to special parents. It sounds really pretty, but it's not necessarily helpful, if that
okay.
makes sense.
Uh-huh.
I think what you can do is just let that person validate their feelings and not try to fix it, just to be present. So not to say, this is what you should do. Or 5 years ago, my neighbor's cousin's uncle's aunt faced that same challenge. There can be some benefit in wanting to identify with somebody's struggle, but I think just to say, hey, I can tell that you're really hurting, and I just want you to know, like, I care about you, I love you, I'm praying for you. Um, One thing that was meaningful to us when we faced everything is our church community was amazing about, saying, hey, we're praying for you. And they'd put a card in the mail. You joke about casseroles, but I mean, somebody dropped off food at our house and said, you don't need to worry about food right now. We just want you to know we are thinking about you. So those practical things can be very meaningful. I think what people really long for is to be seen and to be acknowledged that they're having a struggle, not that they need you to fix it. Because sometimes there's really not anything you can do, but just to have that person know that I'm loved, even in the midst of my struggle is a good thing. You just want to not try to fix it, if that makes sense, or not feel like you have to fix it. I think what we need more than anything is just kind of that presence and that unconditional love, that support, that encouragement, just to know that you're there and that you see and that you are praying for them. And that, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. And you said something else that makes me think, as moms, we obviously have our children to train, and you're talking about teaching your sons, what it's like to be the sibling of a special needs kid. So, okay. So I'm in the grocery store, I'm walking down the aisle, and I see someone who visibly has some disability. You
Right.
said, like, as you're talking in line or whatever, just, online computer, like, just
Right.
let people know that they are seen and that you care about them or whatever. So give me a tip. I'm
Okay.
in the grocery store. How do I train my children better, or how do I
Right.
respond in the most loving way?
Right. The most loving thing, treat them like people. Treat them like you would treat any other person. If they're in a wheelchair, they're still people. I know some people with disabilities, like cerebral palsy, like people will speak down to them like somehow they're less intelligent because they're in a wheelchair or because they have a visible disability. And that's not the case. But recognize that kids are naturally curious, and it's okay for them to ask questions. Like, don't feel like you have to like hush, 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 hush. So like for mine, if we see a kid in a wheelchair, you can say, hey, how are you today? And you can say, isn't that a cool wheelchair? That's like awesome. That's really neat. Not that you have to like draw attention necessarily to the difference, but if your kids ask question, it's okay to ask questions. Like it, as a mom, it made me sad sometimes because kids would be like, why does that baby have such a big head? What's wrong with that baby? And but I knew it was coming from an innocent place. They were just curious. She had a big head. They wanted to know why she had a big head. So you can use those moments of curiosity, to answer their questions. Some people are born differently. God makes each of us different. You might have a big foot. She might have a big head. God made each of us different. Isn't it neat how we all are different and we all don't have to be the same? So I think you can model that, in some ways, that they don't have to be afraid of people who are different. Different is different. It's not bad. So I think it's okay to say, yeah, we're all different. Isn't it neat how God made each of us differently? Aren't you glad that we're not all exactly the same? So if that makes sense, that's just, little things. If it comes up in daily life, you don't have to be like, shh, no, don't say that. Don't mention anything. Because they know, they can tell, if somebody's talking about them or looking at them. Again, I can't speak for all disabilities because, again, my daughter's challenges are different from other people's challenges. Hers are a little bit more invisible than other people's might be. But just, to teach your children that Some people think differently. Some people get around differently. Some people might look differently. And that's okay. That's okay to be different. We're all not the same.
Right. And I think as believers, what a wonderful opportunity to teach our children that God is amazingly creative and he has a special plan for each person, and that we just need to embrace what God and who God has made us to be and walk forward in that. So I
Right.
think that is a great place to end. And I wonder if you would be willing to pray for the moms that are listening in
Sure.
portion, if they are a special needs mom
Right.
or someone who's a friend of a special needs mom. Would you just close us out with prayer?
Sure. I sure will. God, we just thank you so much for the opportunity that you give us, God, just to talk and to learn and to grow and to expand our understanding of who you've made us to be as moms, and as women and as people who are followers of you. God, I pray that you would give us wisdom and insight to know how to relate with one another well. I pray that you would give us the heart to love one another the way that you love us. And I pray that you would just give us that wisdom we need to see how you might be able to bring beauty out of brokenness. And Father, that you could bring just that completion, that redemption out of any difficult situation that we're facing. Just give us wisdom, give us grace, give us love, and help us to show others you in the process. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now, Sarah, just in case I've missed it, how are ladies going to get a hold of you and find you?
You can go to sarahebrooks.com, and that's Sarah with an H. Or to learn more about the book, you can go to thewonderfulwayyouare.com.
All right. That sounds great. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Pam.
I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true.